Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Norsca in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And the key issues that Creative Assembly should fix with respect to Norsca. Call it my top 5 list of issues that Norsca does have at the moment in Warhammer 3. Well, the first issue is that their legendary lords, their existing legendary lords, Wulfric and Trog, do absolutely need unique mechanics and substantial improvements in their campaigns. Like Wulfric just starting with a tier 1 settlement and then having a port over here that takes a couple of turns to get to is not ideal. It's better with Trog, but Trog is not really fitting to his character, his voice acting specifically. As well as faction effects, lord scale lines, items, you name it. There's a lot of different things that need to be improved for Norsca. And with Wulfric in particular, if you look at the campaign mechanics that, say, someone like Arbol has or someone like Oxyatl has, those campaign mechanics, those constant teleportations for challenges, that's really something that Wulfric should have in his campaign, because that is exactly what he does in the lore. It's not Arbol that's teleporting around the world or Oxyatl that are teleporting around the world, it's actually Wulfric. So they literally took a mechanic that would have fit him perfectly, and they added it to legendary lords that don't have it in their campaigns. Like Siege with the Changeling actually makes the most sense from a number of different perspectives. Regardless, Wulfric should have that. Really, he should be the Master Troll, because he is in quite a few ways. In a different way than the Changeling, to be sure. So that's one of the things, the legendary lords. Then the number 2 issue actually has to do with lords, generic lords for Norsca. Now, it is likely we're going to get another lord choice, but it's not just getting another lord choice that matters, it's also updating the existing lords. So, with Norscan Marauder Chieftains, they lack a melee skill line. They have this weird skill line of choices between, Slanesh, Khorne, all that. But really, the one that's best is, of course, Nurgle, for a number of different reasons. Specifically, just getting regeneration is a pretty damn big deal, especially when you have a War Mammoth as a mount. Like, they're pretty good on War Mammoth, they're not really so great before you get on the War Mammoth. So yeah, they need a melee skill line. They actually need better models, for what it's worth, and I think that's something that you could talk about with regards to Norsca as a whole. The models they have are fairly outdated in a lot of ways. Like, some of them have been there since the beginning of Warhammer 1, or quite a few of them. So that's the second issue, the situation with lords, but also on that second issue, the situation with heroes. So Norsca does have good hero choices. That's not necessarily the problem, but it's the way you acquire those heroes that absolutely is, or rather one specific hero. So you do get wereskins at tier 3, you do get shaman sorcerers at tier 2. That's great, especially wereskins, Skinwolf wereskins. Those are pretty good. Right, but the problem is Fimir Balefiends. Fimir Balefiends are your casualty replenishment hero. And casualty replenishment is very important for any race in the game, but it's especially important for Norsca because they have units that are glass cannon units. They can do a lot of damage, but they also take a lot of damage. So having a good casualty replenishment is a pretty big deal in their campaigns. They can get it, for what it's worth. This is the difference between, say, Norsca and Vampire Coast. Norsca is painful to play, but you are aiming for something that works, because you get better units. You get Skinwolf's armor. You do get Marauder champions, as expensive as they are, and they are expensive. But you can make it work. It's painful, but it does work. Just in general, changes with tier recruitment, structures, etc. Changes that would do a lot. And changes to the Norscan economy, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So that's issue number 2. Regarding heroes, regarding lord choices, changing of skill lines for those heroes and lords, because if we look at, sorcerer, shaman, no special skill line over here. I mean, they do have certain things they unlock, but yeah, they could really use some changes with regards to how they handle this entire skill line. From the top to adding a kind of skill line choice over here as an example. So that's the second issue, lords and heroes. The third issue is with regards to the monster hunts. You are obliged to engage in the monster hunts in a Norscan campaign. for a number of reasons. The rewards are significant. It does help you out with your campaign objectives, etc. Or it's mandatory. But regardless, Norsca's monster hunts are very outdated in a number of different ways. One, they are using the old quest system from Warhammer 1, and even when that works perfectly, and keep in mind it can and does break a lot of the time, even when it does work perfectly, it's still causing issues. It's still frustrating because, like, oh, go to X territory to trigger this, which might be on the other side of the map, can be frustrating. Adding teleportation to Wolfric would help for him, not necessarily for so much for anyone else. So those monster hunts, I think they should be kept in the game, but I don't think the way they work right now is great. Also, the battles themselves, because of all the kind of special abilities that exist in there, not because of the enemies, but the special abilities, can be some of the most difficult quest battles in the game. That's great until you start talking about campaign replayability. So I think it's fine to have some difficult quest battles, but all of them can wipe out your entire army if you're not careful. It's just a lot of annoying micro, because it's like, oh, here's a spell on the entire map that's going to do a lot of damage. That's not necessarily that great to engage with. So that's the third issue with monster hunts in a campaign. Fourth issue is, well, everything to do with the way their campaign functions from an economic and research perspective. So Norsca's economy is pretty bad. Specifically, they can generate a good amount of money from ports, to be sure, but ports are always going to be expensive. They do have the best ports in the game, but remember, ports are expensive. They take longer to construct, potentially. They do cost a good amount of money. And while the income is going to be generated, it's a point of vulnerability that you're going to have with those ports, and it's only really later on in a campaign that you're really going to make ports work. The regular income building might as well be taken out of the game for Norsca. It's cheap, to be sure, very cheap, but 50 income is pathetic. So that should be doubled, if not tripled, in terms of the income benefit that you're giving. And I think maybe ports should have more income by default. But of course, that brings us to another point. Specifically, the top bar. See, Norsca, what I meant by Norsca being able to get there as a faction is, like, literally they have a lot of different income benefits for ports, and these do stack. So if you're playing around, if you're cheesing the system of the top bar, you can absolutely get an income from a significant beneficial income from ports. I feel that the way that works is not necessarily great, because it's just like, I don't know, it just feels like manipulating the system as opposed to engaging with it naturally. So for instance, let's say, you know, I want to get a bunch of relationship with Nurgle. Let's just resolve this. Right? I would raise the settlement for Nurgle, and I would lose favor with others. But let's say I want to get favor with 2 or 3. It's a frustrating experience, because you're losing favor with some, gaining with others, and, you know, herding cats, kind of, that kind of system. It just feels like dealing with with the spreadsheet, really, more so than engaging with the game properly. But then you also have another problem with this entire system, really, in that when you're dealing with this system, it's not going to be that great, because Norsca relies on sacking settlements, on looting them, sacking settlements. Then they also want to hold certain settlements, certain key settlements. We'll get into the research tree as the final issue. They want to sack settlements, they want to raise settlements, then they want to occupy them. So you end up in this kind of campaign dynamic where, like, when you're taking a settlement, you always want to sack it for the money, because you need it. Then you want to raise it the next turn. Then you want to occupy it. So you have, like, 2 free armies just to take one single settlement. Or 2 armies at the very least. Like, one to sack the settlement on one turn. Then the next turn, one to raise. And then another one to occupy it. It is genuinely frustrating in a lot of ways. But this is what I mean Norsca can work, because you can get 20% casualty replenishment, you can get Lord Recruit rank, you can get upkeep benefits. It's there, but it is very, very long, and it doesn't match the pacing of Warhammer 3. It worked in Warhammer 1, didn't really work that well in Warhammer 2, and now in Warhammer 3 it's flat out broken. Then we have Norsca's research tree. This research tree does have a bunch of significant benefits, but sweet lord, are these benefits fluff. What do I mean by that? Well, here's the thing to mention about Norsca. you do get a bunch of different significant benefits for certain settlements, like, construction cost, minus 33% of our military support and economy, for taking Zarnagrund. Now, Zarnagrund is not even the worst situation, but you end up having a lot of these kind of objectives that take so many different turns that realistically, you're probably only going to look at doing a handful of these, even in a very long campaign. Like, we're talking about 80 turns campaign, and realistically, no one's going to do all of these. And that's just from a transport perspective. Keep in mind, actually researching all of this stuff takes a lot of time itself. So you're looking at a lot of turns to even research this, a lot of turns to even get to those elements, even if you're aiming for it. And that's beyond the fact that, you have different campaign objectives, different objectives. It just doesn't mesh well. The research tree doesn't work together with the other systems. The economy doesn't work for Norsca in the crucial portion of the early game. And then you have the problem, it's like, it's a very painful early game. It might work in the long term, but it's always that level of grind and frustration and manipulating the game. I think if Creative Assembly were to fix these kind of issues, the situation on Norsca would be much better. And yeah, units, not especially in a great spot either. Like, there's some fun stuff, but like the early game stuff, it's pretty fluff, really. Like, who exactly in their right mind would want to recruit like Marauders and Marauder Spearmen in a Norsca campaign? Like, basically, in a Norsca campaign, you might as well say, okay, there's no tier 1. The only things that are worth recruiting are from tier 2 onwards. That is a problem for Norsca in quite a few ways. The really fun stuff is tier 4, tier 5, some tier 3 things, a couple of them, but yeah, you do have those kind of limitations that do exist in a campaign over and over and over again. So hopefully Creative Assembly will be improving the situation on Norsca. They've chosen to rework Norsca, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I am very much in favor of the idea of them working on Norsca. Also, some people have pointed out that maybe Norsca should have an encamp stance that they can enable without movement. Greenskins can do that. That would be great, wouldn't it? Just worth saying that. They've chosen to work on 3 different races. So Slaanesh, High Elves, Norsca, that all of them need substantial reworks. And I do hope they don't screw it up. That's my perspective. I mean, they did a pretty good job with Omens of Destruction. Like, regardless of how people feel about Greenskins, like what they did for Ogres, what they did for Skarsnik, Warzag, what they did for Khorne, like, fantastic job all around. But hopefully they do better than even that. Kostin Sanya.